Yeah, I know. I got AB's sneakers on today. Before we start with questions, I just want to address, what's going on with AT. I think first and foremost, it's absolutely unacceptable. I think as a league, as a whole, there's been so much more toxicity, racism, homophobia, straight out like nonsense, hate nonsense. And it is absolutely unacceptable. Most of this coming from the online community. Most of this, in my heart of hearts, I believe, not coming from WNBA fans, Indiana Fever fans. I believe that this is people who are using our league, using our players to further divisive agendas. It's not acceptable. Yes, we have to continue to protect our players. We've got to continue to support our players in our league. We get to play a basketball game.
We need to have a very serious and very direct conversation about what Stephanie White decided to do with her media access this week, because the choice she made reveals something important about her priorities, her judgment, and her understanding of the moment this franchise is living through right now. The Indiana Fever are not scheduled to play until later this weekend. There is no game preparation press conference required. There is no competitive result to address, no performance to analyze publicly, no tactical decision to explain to the media. And yet Stephanie White made herself available to reporters and used that platform to go after the fans.
I've said this before about Stephanie White, and I'll say this about this clown. Unacceptable. What? It's very acceptable. You can't blame everybody else. She went on to talk about how she has had, death threats. We all get death threats. That's the Juicy Smollett defense, we call it. Make some stuff up, say you've gotten death threats, blame the fans. You got to blame the fans because you can't take personal responsibility. Everybody else, Diana Taurasi, you see it with Paige Beckers and others, go along to get along. Well, you know what? The only person not talking is Caitlin Clark. Isn't that amazing? This September marks the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and Tunnels to Tower is marking it in a big way. Our Steel Across America's tour is carrying steel from the World Trade Center to 35 cities nationwide. And along the way, we're paying off 343 mortgages, one for every firefighter lost on September 11th, 2001. For Gold Star and fallen first responder families, help us honor their sacrifice and help America never forget. Visit T2T.org.
Let that land. Not to provide a meaningful update on Caitlin Clark's re-aggravated back injury in a way that offers genuine clarity to a fan base that has been waiting for answers. Not to address the organizational questions that have been building for weeks about direction, accountability, and the environment surrounding her most important player. Not to take any of the numerous opportunities available to a head coach to demonstrate leadership and composure during a difficult stretch of the season. She used the platform to criticize the fans, and specifically, she made comments that effectively characterized the audience that has flooded into Indiana Fever basketball over the past 2 seasons. The people who fill those seats and drive those ratings and generate the commercial momentum that has transformed this franchise's visibility as people who are not real WNBA fans, as outsiders, as a problem rather than a gift. This framing requires honest and direct examination because it is not just strategically misguided, it is factually backward.
And yes, that's going to come with criticism. Yes, that's going to come with fans and the love-hate relationship that they have with players and teams. That is going to come. But it's not hard to not be a jerk. And if you are one of these people that are online doing this, do not call yourself a WNBA fan. Our league is about inclusiveness. Our league is about competition. Our league is about elevating women, elevating marginalized communities, including and being inclusive of all different walks of life. That is what our league has always been about from day one. That is what our league will continue to be about. And we will continue to compete at a high level, hold ourselves to a higher standard, continue to be on the forefront of social norms, and we will continue to support one another collectively as a league. Players, coaches, staff, support staff, everyone.
The Indiana Fever did not have the fan engagement they have right now before Caitlin Clark arrived. That is not an opinion. That is a documented and observable reality. Games were not selling out. Broadcasts were not generating the viewership numbers that are now routine. The commercial profile of this franchise was not what it has become. The people filling those arenas and watching those broadcasts found Indiana Fever basketball because of what Caitlin Clark represents and what she delivers every time she is on the floor at full health. To look at that audience, the audience that has transformed the financial and cultural reality of this organization, and characterize them as something other than genuine fans is an extraordinary act of institutional ingratitude. But beyond the ingratitude, there is a consistency problem here that makes Stephanie White's choice to target the fans even more indefensible. Where was this energy when Tiffany Hayes made comments that observers characterized as inciting concerning behavior toward Clark off the court? Where was the institutional response? Where was the commissioner's statement? Where was the head coach's podium moment defending her player and condemning the behavior directed at her? It was not there. The pattern is visible and documented. When behavior or comments create an environment that could be harmful to Caitlin Clark, the institutional response has been muted or absent.
That you didn't even hear from the league in the process. Do you think that that's a fair way for them to have gone about this at all? That it ended like that?
No, I mean, I think obviously when there's a lack of communication, the void is filled with negativity, right? I think, being able to communicate, being able to be the one who reaches out first is important. So yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I would love if I was in that situation, I would have wanted to hear from the league. Look, none of us can control social media. The things that we can do to minimize it. Some of us are in better position than others. Myself as a coach, I don't have to get on there. Players, their brands are on there, and so it's different. It's different, and we can't control that. We know, but continuing to put whatever we can in place, I think, to support, to help, and then
When the fans who showed up for Clark become the subject of criticism, suddenly there is a press conference. There is also the situation involving Myisha Hines-Allen, an Indiana Fever player who publicly supported her teammates during the first game against the Phoenix Mercury this season. Following that display of support, she was subjected to genuinely vile and racially charged attacks online. Where was the institutional press conference then? Where was the commissioner's statement defending her? Where was Stephanie White at the podium expressing disgust at how a member of her own roster was being treated because she chose to stand up for her team? It did not happen. The institutional machinery that is now being activated to criticize the fans was not activated to protect Hines-Allen when she needed it. That double standard is not subtle. It is not hidden. It is playing out in full public view, and the people observing it are drawing the obvious conclusions about who this institution is prepared to defend and who it is prepared to use as a convenient target when the situation demands a deflection.
Has improved since then?
Yeah, I remember that because I remember our players talking about it. I remember myself talking about it. I don't know if fan behavior has improved. I don't feel like legitimate WNBA fans are the ones that we're talking about. I feel like it's an online community and maybe this is my privilege and my being naive, but I truly believe that it is an online community that is using our league, that is using our players to continue to further divisive, hateful narratives.
Now let us address Caitlin Clark's status, because this is the piece of the story that has the most direct impact on the Indiana Fever's competitive and commercial reality, and the piece that is receiving the least satisfying institutional response. Clark has re-aggravated her back. That is the update Stephanie White provided. And it is almost everything that can be said about it with certainty, because Clark herself has not spoken publicly. She has not addressed the Alyssa Thomas situation. She has not appeared in media availability in a meaningful way for nearly a week. The public, the fans who showed up for her and who are now being criticized by her head coach, are operating with almost no genuine information about the player they came to watch. Day-to-day injury management that extends over multiple weeks without clear resolution is a pattern that Indiana has already put this fan base through. Last season produced extended stretches of uncertainty that tested the patience of a fan base that was genuinely committed and genuinely engaged. The implicit promise coming out of that experience was that lessons had been learned, that communication would be clearer, that the management of Clark's health and availability would be handled with more transparency and urgency. The current situation does not reflect that commitment. And then there is the Alyssa Thomas dimension, because it connects directly to Clark's injury status and to the broader pattern of accountability failures surrounding this entire situation. Thomas has spoken to the media following the incident involving Clark. She has described receiving death threats and expressed that the situation has been blown out of proportion. These are her stated experiences, and they are being reported as such. Death threats directed at anyone are unacceptable, and that position does not require qualification. But there is a pattern in this league that deserves honest acknowledgement. When an incident occurs involving physical contact with Caitlin Clark, the player on the other side of that incident has consistently pivoted to a victim narrative in the aftermath. Kennedy Carter went through this cycle. DJ Carrington went through this cycle. The sequence is observable and documented. Physical or aggressive conduct occurs. The public reacts with frustration, and then the player involved in the conduct claims to be the primary victim of the resulting controversy, regardless of what actually happened on the court. The challenge with accepting these claims uncritically is that the specific details being cited, the exact nature and volume of the threatening communications, have not been independently verified or fact-checked in any publicly documented way. We are being asked to take these characterizations at face value in a context where the same characterization has appeared repeatedly under similar circumstances. That is not a reason to dismiss genuine threats if they exist. It is a reason to apply the same journalistic standard of verification that any other significant claim would receive before it becomes the dominant narrative of a news cycle. What is documented, what does not require any additional verification because it happened on a nationally televised basketball court, is that Caitlin Clark sustained contact serious enough that it has been tied to the re-aggravation of a back injury that is now keeping her out of practice and creating uncertainty about her availability for upcoming games. That is the documented physical consequence on the court. The claim that Alyssa Thomas is the primary victim of this situation based on unverified online activity is considerably harder to establish as the central story with the same confidence. And yet, here we are. The head coach of the Indiana Fever is holding press conferences criticizing the fan base, while the player at the center of everything has not spoken publicly in nearly a week. The institutional energy is flowing toward defending against fan criticism rather than toward the transparent and urgent communication that Clark's fan base and the franchise's commercial partners deserve. Let us be absolutely clear about the financial reality underlying all of this, because it matters enormously to the conversation about who has the standing to criticize whom. Aaliyah Boston is earning $6 million. That contract exists because of the commercial environment created by Caitlin Clark's presence in Indiana. Alyssa Thomas is earning $1.4 million this season. That paycheck is funded by the revenue streams that Clark has fundamentally transformed across this league. The checks that everyone in and around this organization receive are larger, more sustainable, and more assured because of what Clark has done for the visibility and commercial value of women's professional basketball. And the response from the head coach is to hold a press conference criticizing the people who made all of that possible. It is not possible to simultaneously characterize Clark's fans as problematic outsiders who do not represent genuine WNBA fandom and also cash the checks that their engagement and investment have made possible. These two positions are in direct and irreconcilable conflict. The financial reality of this league in its current form is inseparable from the audience that arrived specifically for Caitlin Clark. Treating that audience as a liability rather than as the most valuable asset the league has acquired in decades is an institutional choice with consequences that will compound over time. Ryan Howard publicly criticized A'ja Wilson fans after they cheered for a different player during a game in Atlanta. Kalia Copper complained at the podium because Indiana Fever fans booed Dana Bonner following Bonner's departure from the franchise. Every expression of fan engagement that does not conform to what certain players and coaches find comfortable gets characterized as misconduct. Booing is standard behavior at every level of professional sports. Cheering for a preferred player is standard behavior. Fans expressing frustration with outcomes involving their favorite player is standard behavior. What is not standard is a head coach using media time during a week without games to publicly criticize the fan base rather than to provide meaningful clarity about a star player's injury status and competitive availability. Stephanie White has consistently failed to demonstrate the kind of institutional protection for Caitlin Clark that this situation demands. The one moment she stepped to the podium and expressed visible emotion about Clark's treatment was widely characterized as performative in the context of a game where Clark had been benched multiple times despite being healthy enough to play. One theatrical podium moment does not erase the pattern of decisions, public statements, and institutional choices that have placed Clark in an environment that does not serve her interests or maximize her impact. The fans who showed up for Clark are watching all of this. They are watching the press conferences. They are watching the injury management. They are watching the coaching decisions. They are forming conclusions about what this franchise actually values and what it is actually prepared to do to protect and support the player who made everything they currently have possible. Those conclusions are not favorable right now. And no press conference criticizing the fans is going to change that.